Welcome back! Do you see the two farms behind me? In today's video we will focus on optimizing and automating certain boring tasks. For example, we will build an automatic farm like the one behind me. And maybe we will build other automatic stuff as well, but for now we just focus on these farms. So let's get going. I started the day by trying to dig an entrance into the bedrock jail. But see how much I'm digging? I'm just missing the actual staircase. When I pulled this recording here, I saw how close I was and I just missed it. Anyway, now we finally have an easy access to the materials still stored in the house. Anyway, first thing I wanted to do today was to go fishing. We can craft a fishing rod from the strings we got from fighting spiders. Fishing is a really nice source of food and other useful items, especially early game. So let's go to the water and wait for some fish. Fishing in Minecraft works this way, that we wait for water particles to show up and travel to the bobber. And when the bobber is pulled down, we quickly reel in the fishing rod, catching some items. So it's easy, but you need to pay attention for the particles, and so it's kind of boring and time consuming. But we can optimize it. We can build a fishing farm. Here is a very easy design you can find everywhere on YouTube. But it's like never actually explained how the contraption works. The videos are always only, here place your items like this, position yourself here and keep pressing the right mouse button, the use item key, and yeah, it works well. You see that I constantly use the fishing rod, but we are not constantly reeling it in and throwing it again. Only when a fish bites, we reel it in. And the items are collected in the chest below. So how does it actually work? Of course, we need some water to fish in it, but we also have this trapdoor, music or note block, and this pressure plate. It's a very clever design, so let's go over it. Trapdoors can be activated by a signal, and this pressure plate can provide the signal. So when an entity is detected to be weighing on the pressure plate, it sends the signal to the trapdoor and opens. Usually an entity is like a player, but actually the fishing bobber is an entity as well. So when we throw the fishing rod, the bobber lands on it and is on top of the water, making the trapdoor open up. When we do this from the side, you can see that the water current moves our bobber away from the pressure plate, thus closing the trapdoor again. And that's why it's so clever to have the fence post here. When we throw it from the right, the bobber will be pushed against the fence post and so it won't drift away. Anyway, the bobber is now on the water, so the trapdoor is open, revealing the note block from our point of view where we are standing. So why do we have a weird note block here? Let's experiment. Here's the music block without the stone block above, and as you can hear, hitting it with the right or left mouse key would make a sound instead of using the item we have in our hand. And that's the important point. When we target the music block and press the right mouse key, we don't use the current item, we play the note block. And now, putting the block on top of it canceled the sound, but technically we are still trying to play a note on the note block when we press the right mouse key. And so as long as we target the note block, we won't use our fishing rod, so we don't reel it in. Okay, so now let's see what happens when a fish bites. Let's look at it in slow motion. The particles appear indicating that a fish is nearby. The bobber will be pulled underwater. This means no entity is weighing on the pressure plate anymore. The signal to the trapdoor is turned off, closing the trapdoor and cutting the line of sight to the note block. Suddenly, pressing the right mouse key will now use the item we hold in our hands, reeling in the rod, catching a fish or item. And after that, because we keep pressing the right mouse button, we will throw the fishing rod again, making the bobber land on the pressure plate, opening the trapdoor, and we look at the note block again, waiting for the next fish to bite. It's a very clever design, and when we understand it, we can also change stuff. So for example, it's clear what the note block is for. It's a block that when targeted overrides the right click item use key. Can you think of any other blocks that do the same? How about a chest? When you right click a chest, it would open up. Though when a block is above it, blocking the chest, nothing happens. Let's try it. Here the note block is replaced with the chest and it works as well. So I have no clue why everybody uses note blocks, which requires redstone to craft. A chest works perfectly fine as well. Anyway, fishing with a fishing farm like this is great because you can go AFK, but you also only catch fish and chunk, no treasures. That's because there is a difference when fishing in open water versus other water. In open water, you can catch treasure such as enchanted bows and fishing rods, enchanted books, or name tags. So having a farm is great for food, but going out with a boat and fishing is still useful. Anyway, fishing farm done, let's move on. I wanted to build an automatic potato farm next. For that, I first wanted to have a house where I can breed villagers, because a potato farm requires villagers. So I took a boat and abducted 2 of them and brought them into a house I built nearby. On one side the wall is open, but I block it off partially with a trapdoor. This allows baby villagers to still go through, but blocks the adults. Then we can place some beds, because villagers only breed if there are enough beds and if they have enough food. Beds are placed, so let's give them food, and eventually hearts should appear and they produce a baby. Theoretically, the baby should now try to walk over to a bed and fall into the trapdoor, where I then can catch it with the boat. It didn't work as well as I imagined, but good enough. Now it's time to build the actual potato farm. Like always, I look up a basic example on YouTube and copy it. So we place a water source in the middle of the farm, which can supply up to 4 blocks of farmland with water. Then on one side we want to prepare the collection system. When a villager works on the farm, grows a potato, and they see another villager without food, they try to throw them some food. Theoretically, the thrown food should then fall into this collection chest, and that's how they can work the farm for us. So let's bring the first villager. This will be the starving villager without food, so I place them here in the middle. Now we should be ready to bring a farmer villager. Villagers are unemployed by default, but placing a composter nearby turns the villager into a farmer. Looks good, but I'm not quite done yet. I start to build a second farm to get double the amount of potato. And while I built the second farm, I thought about another topic I wanted to share some thoughts on. Let's talk about security research and how it relates to Minecraft. What even is security research? Well, research means you are doing research, so doing science. And doing science generally means following the scientific method. The scientific method is the process by which science is carried out. The overall process involves making conjectures or hypotheses or guesses, deriving predictions from them as logical consequences, and then carrying out experiments based on those predictions to determine whether the original conjecture was correct. This describes hacking in general very well. Let's make an example. Let's say you have this URL. You could make a hypothesis or guess about it. For example, maybe the system has bad authorization checks on the ID number in the URL. That's a good theory. So if that is the case, we can make a prediction. We should be able to change the ID and maybe get access to data from another user. So now we have to conduct an experiment to see if that prediction was correct. And there are 2 outcomes now. Either it doesn't work, and then we have to correct our initial hypothesis and we have to come up with a new guess, or it does work and we confirm our hypothesis. As you can see, the scientific process works well for anything hacking related, but I think when we say security research, we specifically mean that we use this process to explore the unknown. And in our example, it's very well known that web applications might have bad authorization checks. So showing that this can happen is not really new insight. Thus maybe not necessarily security research. An example of actual research is maybe my video about identifying good research. In there, Gareth Hayes found a weird browser quirk that could be interesting in some XSS cases, thus uncovering something new, something we didn't know. So that is generally security research. But the lines are blurry and I don't want to be super strict about stupid word definitions. Reality is probably more of a spectrum. I made an example of what I think is not a security research, but I have a counter example where I contradict myself. In browser security or iOS or Linux kernel research, you are looking for known vulnerability classes like use after free or buffer overflows. So they are well known and understood, like missing authorization checks on websites. But in that case, you look for them in a highly complex and non-explored target, where you maybe need to develop new research methodology to find them. And that's definitely research for me. So you see, I even contradict myself. The lines are blurry. Definitions of words are bullshit anyway. But also it doesn't matter whether some work is security research or not. What matters is the scientific process and how incredibly useful it is for our line of work. So when you get stuck somewhere, always try to think of it. I wanted to talk about the scientific process because it's what I use all the time when learning new stuff as well. Also while playing Minecraft. Sometimes while playing I have some ideas or guesses about how something works and then I conduct experiments. For example, I heard about the upcoming Minecraft version 1.19 with a new block called the skulk sensor. It can detect sounds nearby. And as you just saw, a fishing farm for treasure is not that easily possible anymore because you need open water and a contraption must not be in the way. There are some techniques, but I thought I could try to build one with the new block. So I use a scientific method. I come up with a theory. My theory is that it detects moving entities in a certain distance. So what if the bobber on top of the water is just out of reach and when it gets pulled down it triggers the sensor? That could then send the signal to the trapdoor. This way we could automate it again. So next I started experimenting and building a proof of concept. Here it is. It doesn't work that well, there seems to be some randomness involved with the bobbing, but it works like 50% of the time well enough for an AFK farm. We can stand here, throw our rod, and when the bobber is pulled down, the skulk sensor notices it, closes the trapdoor, and we reel in the rod. So as you can see, the scientific method I use for looking for vulnerabilities also works in Minecraft to abuse the behavior of blocks. Anyway, let's go back to my potato farm experiment. I waited for a long time, but it's not working. I don't think the villager throws the food. So I decided to change the collection method to using a hopper minecart. I've seen that in some other video. And that seems to work. Cool. Besides the potato farm, I also decided to build a small infinite lava farm with dripstone. By placing a lava source at the top with the dripstone below, lava slowly accumulates in the cauldron. It takes a while, but this way we can generate more and more lava buckets. It's a very useful source for fuel which we can use to cook fish or potatoes. Anyway, let's go back and watch the potato farm while we talk about something else. Last episode we learned how Minecraft mods can be developed, and I thought we could maybe create our own AutoFish mod. With that we could go to the open ocean and fish for treasure and not just junk. How do we implement that? The problem is we are still very inexperienced Minecraft hackers. We still have to learn a lot before we can come up with our own hacks. But as I mentioned before, looking at the existing projects can be very educational. And so let's look for an existing AutoFish mod, maybe like this one. It seems to be a very popular AutoFish mod and the sources are available too. There are two things we need to figure out now. First, how do we detect if a fish bites? And second, how do we then reel in the fishing rod and cast the fishing rod automatically? We need to answer those questions, and in this code we can find the answer. Turns out this mod is hooking packets from the network handler to detect sounds. It's a bit like the skulk sensor in the upcoming Minecraft version. That's pretty clever. When a fish bites, splashing sounds are played. So when we receive the splashing sound packet, we know we caught a fish and we can trigger the logic for reeling in the rod and recasting it. Okay, first problem solved. But how do we cast the rod? Here is the use rod function and it boils down to the interaction manager calling interact item, which uses whatever item you have in your hand. Perfect, we have both problems solved. With that we can start making our own fishing mod. But I also didn't just want to copy the code, I wanted to see if I can find another method to detect if we caught a fish. Using the Fabric Java docs we can learn about all the existing classes in Minecraft, and when searching for fishing I found this fishing bobber entity. This is the thing that floats on the water and is pulled under when a fish bites. When looking at the attributes of that object, I noticed a boolean caught fish. That sounds promising. So I created a mixin to overlay the fishing bobber entity class and injected some code into the tick method. In game development, a tick method is usually called every game tick, so it's a good place for some debug output. So every tick we print the caught fish boolean. Let's start the game and see what we get. Currently, we don't see anything in the console, but once we cast a fishing rod, a fishing bobbert entity is created, and now we print the information every tick. Let's wait for a fish. Okay, just one moment. And there it is. Indeed, as soon as a fish bit, the caught fish attribute became true. When looking for where caught fish is actually set to true, we can find the onTrack dataset method. I was thinking because tick is called so much, it's probably better to inject into onTrack dataset instead. This way we can only see the change when a fish is caught once and can directly react to it. The inject is at the tail or end of the function because we want to see if it got set to true. Now we can detect the fish, so we could just add the interact item call and we should automatically reel in the rod. And testing that works great. As soon as a fish bites, we detect it and reel in. Now we only miss code to cast the fishing rod again. At first I just added another interact item call again, but I noticed that we cannot do that. That's too fast. We have to wait a short moment, so I added a bit of logic here. Basically we set a recast countdown, which is countdown every tick, and when it reaches 0, then we cast the rod. Set it to -1 so nothing happens anymore. It's basic, but it works. Once we catch another fish, it's set to 20, it will start counting down each tick, and when we reach 0, cast the rod again, waiting for the next time. Cool, that works. Now, if you look closely at the code, you might have noticed that I have here an AutoFish enable check. I wanted to add a menu to enable and disable hacks like this. And from the shulker dupe mod I briefly introduced last video, I learned how to hook a certain game screen. This mod hooked the shulker box inventory screen to add a button with a function to it. Not quite what I want. I wanted to add a button to the game menu, but still pointed me into the right direction. And so I found a game menu screen class. Probably works in a similar way, but how exactly does it work? I can figure that out with another trick. Knowing the target mixing class now, I can search with this code snippet for other projects that use it as well. And so here in the Figura mod code, I learned that you can also change the shown screen with set screen. So I just added a basic LiveOverflow button into the game menu, and when you press it, it launches my own custom screen. Here is the LiveOverflow screen class. This screen class has an init function where we can add buttons like we have seen before. Besides the button position XY and the width, we can also set the display text and define what happens when you click on it. This is the button callback. When clicking the button, it will toggle the AutoFish setting. Awesome. So now here you can see everything in game. If we open the menu, we have the LiveOverflow button in the top left and we can enable or disable the auto fishing. Amazing. Now we can go out on the sea with a boat and start fishing for real treasure. Isn't this nice and peaceful? I decided to go watch some more Minecraft YouTube videos to fuel my addiction, but oh, when I came back, I saw I was dead, killed by drowned. Reviewing the footage, I saw how I got swarmed by them. Oopsie. Well, as I said, while I was sitting in this boat fishing, I watched videos about 2B2T and I saw how they use boat fly hack. Remember how we got kicked when attempting to fly in episode 1? Maybe people use boat fly hacks because when a player sits in a boat, flying is not detected? Let's test it. Again, we can get inspired by people who have implemented the boat fly hack before. There are tons of examples online, and turns out it's actually pretty simple. Could have figured it out myself. It's a lot less complex than the AutoFishing mod. So here, for example, on each game tick, we check if we are sitting in a vehicle. And then if we press the jump key, we add a small value to the upwards velocity, so flying up. Let's test it. Let's take a boat and keep pressing space to fly up. All right, that was easy enough. Oh, flying is not enabled on the server. Wait, okay, so this boat fly hack doesn't work? I mean, 2B2T is a special server, old Minecraft version, and lots of custom patches to fix certain hacks, so maybe it's a 2B2T specific hack? Just a guess, no clue, but I got curious. How exactly does the server detect flying? Maybe we can bypass the check? By the way, this is exactly the same process like I would do when hunting for security vulnerabilities or finding bypasses to security checks. It just happens to be about flying in Minecraft now. So a good start is always the error message. This way we can find the exact position where the security check failed. So I take my local paper server setup and search for flying is not enabled on the server. Remember from the second episode, Minecraft servers work by decompiling the official server code and patching it. So when we create a local paper server, we have access to the actual Minecraft sources. And when searching for this string, we find two places in the code: player connection.java and server game packet listener implementation.java. I can already tell you that the second one is the right location. Not sure what the first one is about, but it's never called. I figured this out because I added debug outputs and they were not printed. But here in the server game packet listener, this is executed and printed. So we are in the right spot. Here we see the server check where it determines that a player is flying. When this above ground vehicle tick count is above 80, we get kicked. This value is always incremented when the client vehicle is floating as true. If it's not true, and in one other case, this tick counter is reset. So now with these debug prints, we can see when the counter is incremented and when it's reset. Let's rebuild the server with our changes and restart the server. It takes a while for everything to compile and start, but here we go. When we go in a boat and fly up, the counter increases. And boom, it reaches 80 and we get kicked. But do you see what happens if we interrupt flying upwards for a brief moment? We basically fall for a short moment but keep flying up afterwards. The counter is reset. This means we can fly, as long as we keep an eye on the tick counter and make sure to fall every once in a while. You can see the boat dipping always a bit when I let go of the space key. This is when the counter is reset. But do you know what this means? If we write flying code logic where once in a while we are automatically dipped down for just a brief moment, we can fly indefinitely. But before we do that, let's look a bit closer into the server code, because now that we know we can fly with boats, how about flying without a vehicle? How does the flying check for regular players look like? Turns out it's basically the same. Also a counter that is counted up when we are floating and can be reset by falling for a brief moment. Let's take a closer look. We are counting up when client is floating as true. Let's look at where this value is set. Here. So if D12 is larger than 0.03, then we are floating. When checking what D12 is, we can see it's basically the vertical velocity. So we can basically say we are floating unless we fall with a downward velocity greater than 0.03 or less than minus 0.03, whatever your point of reference is. That sounds easy to bypass. And here is my final code. To bypass the fall check, I have defined a fall speed constant of minus 0.04. So it's a little bit bigger than the server tests for. Also, max speed is currently set to 3, but seems like we can go wicked fast too. No clue why the server does not recognize us moving too fast. But anyway, this is all just some logic to make flying a nice experience. When we press space and, for example, forward, we create a forward velocity and override our player's current velocity. So if we point upwards, we fly upwards. To bypass the flying check, we are counting here a toggle value. Every time the toggle value reaches 0, we do not fly up, but fall with the fall speed, but only for one tick. Right afterwards, toggle will be set to 40 again. Now it takes another 40 ticks to decrement toggle, and when we reach 0, we fall for one tick again. This should bypass the server check. And here's the result. We can now enable the fly hack in the option menu, press space to float, and just zoom around the map. Oh my god, flying is so awesome, and we can go really exploring now. There's still an issue with landing. As you can see, if we hit the floor a bit too hard, we get a lot of damage. It's similar to when you fly with Elytra. We could update this and create, I don't know, some autopilot code that carefully lands, or just be careful with landing and then it will be fine. But still, look at this. Isn't this amazing? We can just zoom around the map and explore super quickly the world. For example, there is this one cave very close to our base that we could explore, and down there, it turns out, is a huge exposed mineshaft. It looks really cool. There's also a spider spawner down there. So some other time we go explore there. Other than that, we can just fly around and enjoy the landscape. And you know, we can quickly go places that we haven't visited before. It's so cool. It's so much fun. Flying is just awesome. So enjoy the last clips of me flying, and then see you next episode.